All right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to week 3 of our Coping with COVID-19 Creative Solutions for Your Business, brought to you by the Center for Business Growth and Innovation in Advanced Iowa. Today, our staff is going to give a quick overview of where's the free money. In the last month or so, as we've been dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic, we've seen lots of responses and recovery efforts from both private and public, with a large focus on public resources. And a lot of those can be a little confusing. There's going to be a lot of different deadlines and things to keep in mind, things to think about. We're by no means experts, but we're going to do something we used to do back in the day, a bit of a linkorama, and give you a lot of different links, resources, and things to think about as you kind of approach the rest of your April and when it comes to applying for some of these support programs. My name is Patrick Linsman. I'm Senior Program Manager at the Center for Business Growth and Innovation. Today I'm joined by my colleagues, Dan Binkin with Advanced Iowa and Amy Dutton with the Regional Small Business Development Center at the University of Northern Iowa, where she's the Regional Director. So with that, if you have questions for us, please put them into the Q&A box, or if you're watching us live on Facebook, please submit some comments. We will do our best to answer those questions, or at least direct you to the right resource. A lot of things we're going to cover today, so let's dive right in. We've all seen Dan and Amy on different places before. We're going to start with Iowa resources. So Amy, could you just talk a little bit about the Targeted Small Business Sole Operator Fund?
You bet. So this was one of the early iterations of aid that came out of the state of Iowa's Iowa Economic Development. And that was because they realized pretty quickly that there was a need for folks who weren't maybe a big company who had lots of employees, folks who maybe were sole operators. There wasn't a spot for them to start getting relief right away. They had another program that was for those with 2 to 25 employees. And so as a result, there was kind of this gap. So they took a program that was already out there, the Targeted Small Business Program, which is intended to help disadvantaged small businesses. So those that are owned by a woman, by a minority, by an individual with disability, a veteran. And those folks, typically the benefit of this program is to be found by individuals looking to do business with small businesses who are run by disadvantaged individuals. So they took that same program and they added a layer on. So this is still open through the end of this week. So in order to apply, you do need to fall into one of those groups. Your company has to be majority owned by somebody in one of those particular groups. You can apply online, and I'm going to look at that information while we're talking here so that I make sure I give you the right details on applying for that. But you do have to apply first to be a targeted small business. You have to get that application in process, and you have to be a single owner business with no employees, or a corporation with only one owner and no employees. And this has to be the sole or the primary source of income for the business owner. So if this is just a side hustle and you have another main job, you don't qualify for this program. You must be in the state of Iowa, operating for a profit, and make less than $4 million in gross income. So there's some checks that you have to mark before you can apply for this. You'll be asked to apply to provide a 3-month income statement. They're going to want to see your revenues from March of 2019 and your revenues for March 2020 so that they can kind of see before COVID what your revenues were like, post-COVID what that looks like. A balance sheet doesn't have to be complicated, a very simple one, and a W-9 form. You're going to need to tell them a little bit about what your economic loss was. So what happened as a result of the COVID disaster, and what did that do to your financial situation as a business? And then what your estimated loss is for March 15th through April 15th. And you should be able to illustrate that pretty clearly, because by the 10th of, which is the end of this week, we're going to be real close to that April 15th deadline. And then what you're going to do with those funds. Now that one, as I said, is open until the end of this week. And in that case, you are going to be telling them those circumstances, and then they're going to be weighing those applications for up to $10,000, and they're telling us until funds are exhausted. And we don't know what that number is. So we've provided you there an email address for more information, and that's the website where you can go out there and take a look at the program and all of those facts. And as we go through all of these things, feel free to reach out either through the Q&A on the presentation or after the fact, reach out to our center, and we'll help where I can.
Yeah, one thought that I had that I would love to get both your opinions on as we go through all of these, so we'll cover now, is there any harm in applying?
No.
In your opinion?
No. And this one in particular does not have an exclude or an overlap with the other programs that we're aware of because it's a state program. There are some things as we go forward and talk about some of the federal dollars where you have to be a little more careful, but no, on this one, there's no harm in applying if you qualify.
Awesome.
I think that's a good point. I would add one quick thing too on this program, and correct me when I'm wrong because I'm often wrong, obviously. But when you apply and you at the same time simultaneously are applying for the TSB program, that program does not have a fee to apply for. Correct, Amy?
That's right. Yeah. So no fee to apply for that, and then there are some benefits you'll get down the road. Yeah.
And they used to, and I don't know if they still do, have a loan program attached to TSB, which carries, I think, typically a reduced interest rate.
They do have that. And I know in the past there had been some grant programs, and who knows if those will resurface. They were around, I believe, around the last economic downturn in 2008, if I'm not mistaken.
But even if you don't get the financing or the grant,
Yep.
there are still several positive benefits of being certified as a TSB business. Oftentimes government contracting requires portions to be done with TSB businesses, and that can be a way in the door for you as a business owner, right?
Absolutely. And that's the intent, is to find ways to help those small businesses who might otherwise be not have the same advantages. And you mentioned the government contracting. There is a stipulation that a certain amount of that government contracting has to go to these targeted small businesses. So there's a natural in there if you happen to fall into one of those buckets to be put in front of those bidders. Mm-hmm.
One other thing to keep in mind, and then we'll move on, the state of Iowa has also introduced an e-notary program. So I do believe for TSB, you do have to have something notarized for the application. But
That's correct.
That has switched now where you can find e-notaries. That's a program through the Secretary of State in Iowa that you don't have to even leave home to go get your notary done. Or I've also heard of people using the drive-through at their bank to get their stuff notarized. So moving on to another Iowa resource. Dan, you want to talk a little bit about the business tax deferrals?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is all part of the same application, I believe, as what Amy, oh, I'm sorry, no, it's not. This is part of the application originally that they had for the small business relief program that has now expired in terms of the deadline is over. But you can still find this on the Iowa Department of Revenue website. I think it's also linked on the Iowa Economic Development Authority's website. We have the link here as well. But essentially what this is doing is, so many of the businesses that we are working with right now, first and foremost, their main issue is cash flow and a lack thereof, obviously. And so in these times where cash flow is so incredibly hard to come by, government entities, local and federal, are doing all they can to help you keep what cash flow you do have rather than putting it towards tax programming and things like that. And so that's exactly what this is. They are deferring the taxes on, help me out when I get this wrong, Amy, but I think it's property taxes, sales tax, payroll tax.
This one through the state is the sales tax and your withholding tax. So your payroll tax, your withholding tax, and your sales tax. Property tax is my understanding, those they're waiving penalties, and that's at a different level. But
okay,
this particular program is for would be use, withholding, and sales tax.
Okay. For a lot of people, those were obviously due at the end of March. And so they're waiving fees and penalties on that. Okay. And so then I think the new deadline for that is either the end of June or July 15th.
It's July. Yep.
Okay. For people that can then get back in and make up what they owe without penalty, so that they can kind of hold on to their cash flow, use it for payroll, use it for inventory, other costs and ongoing issues for their business.
Right. And we have been told, and when I say we, the Small Business Development Center Network, our leadership has spoken with Department of Revenue, and they've indicated a willingness. They recognize that by July, we don't really know. My crystal ball happens to be out of commission right now, but we don't know what it's going to take for the recovery. And people may still be in a pinch in July. And if that's the case, they're willing to work with folks on payment plans to get them caught up and continue moving forward. So
Awesome. So that one you can find online and you can apply. Is there any sort of approval, or is that just sort of?
You do have to apply. I think that's the main thing that we want to say there, is that this is not just something you're automatically given or grandfathered into. You have to go out and apply for this.
right.
If you do want that opportunity, make sure you apply.
All right. Sounds good. Moving on, as many of our businesses have seen in the last, I guess, 5 weeks now, a lot of different federal programs have come out, some through SBA, a lot of acronyms like PPP and FFCRA and EIDL. So we're going to start with the SBA Economic Injury Disaster Loan. And there's a couple new pieces of information that came out even just last week about it. So Amy, you want to talk a little bit about?
You bet. You bet. So this one, as the name implies, is a loan. So this is kind of akin to when we'd have a flood or a tornado and you have a disaster. You've got that opportunity to apply to the SBA, who comes in the time of disaster and provides relief. This is a little different, though, because we don't have the physical disaster. We only have the economic injury. And so this loan, you don't have to specify what the injury was necessarily. You don't tell them, I had this much damage to my building. Instead, you're going to be providing them with documents that tell them about your business. So this is a loan application that's made directly to the Small Business Administration, so not through a bank, directly to the SBA. You can borrow up to $2 million. It's on a very long amortization, so a 30-year term, 3 3/4% for profit businesses, and nonprofits can actually apply for this and they get a 1% reduction in that rate. This is a loan that's approved by SBA loan officers, and they're telling us about a 4-week turnaround. So 2 to 3 weeks for them to analyze the applications, and then another week or two for cash to be dispersed. Again, I want to reiterate about the amount of the loan. It is not a situation where you tell them how much you need, because this comes back as our biggest question as people apply is, well, where do I tell them how much I need? The SBA loan officers will make that determination based on the financials that you provide. There's an interesting component. This came out, as Patrick said, we had new information. The last 2 weeks has just been an ever evolving flow of information. So I guess we want to also make the little statement here that all of this information we're sharing today is to the best of our knowledge as of it stands, as of what we know today. So things are constantly evolving. But on this EIDL program, there is $10,000 in a forgivable loan advance that you can apply for at the same time that you apply for the EIDL loan. So when you apply for EIDL, you can request the $10,000 loan advance, which is forgivable. Our understanding is that that money is, if you've applied for it, you can receive it. And even if your loan application is declined, you're still entitled to that $10,000 that can be forgivable. So that is intended to be an early way to get more cash flowing and help businesses get started on using those funds and apply them to where their need is greatest. You can use the proceeds for pretty much anything, ordinary and necessary financial obligations. So payroll, salary, sick leave, rent, or mortgage. You can even use this to service pre-existing debt if needed. There are no personal guarantees for loans under $200,000, and no collateral is required for loans of $25,000 or less. This is a unique time for SBA. They're actually not looking at real estate collateral, which is normally one of the things that they do. They will be looking at the information in the application and a credit score. And the big thing to note is there's a 12-month deferral from the date of the note on payment. So, and there's no penalty to apply and decline the loan. There's no penalty to pay off the loan early.
There's no fees to get the loan. There's no servicing fees ongoing with a loan like there would be with SBA lending.
Yep, that's
right. A lot of real
No.
positive things here. There's a 30-year amortization loan is really nice. You know, knowing you have a fixed rate for 30 years on a business loan is always unheard of. They typically are 5-year balloons. The fact that they're reaching out to nonprofits is a unique thing that SBA in my time has never done before. So there's a lot of really cool things about this. The application itself is incredibly slick. I've helped a few different companies go through it. You're essentially going to need to know what your revenues were and your cost structure was for January of this year, and then for the 11 months of last year. So they're basically doing a trailing 12 months as of January 31st. Very, very simple, just those two numbers, I think. And then there's a box to check right before you hit submit that says, would you like to be considered for the $10,000 forgivable advance? Make sure to check that box. And if you have filled out this loan application prior to the middle of last week, I think, Amy, you were talking about this, to make sure that you go back in and reapply and check that box, I believe is what you have to do. Because
that's our understanding. They did update the portal for this loan, as you said, kind of early last week. So if you were early on in the game on this one, go back to them and request that $10,000 advance.
Perfect. I think it's also important to say one more time that this is our knowledge of the programs to the best of our ability as of April 7th here this morning, and that things change rapidly with these programs. New programs have been coming out, new offerings, things are being tweaked on old programs. So it's important to remember that what we're giving you right now is the best of what we know as of right now.
All right. Sounds good. Let's move on to our next one. We've got a more recent one, I think came out towards the end of last week. As a part of the CARES Act, there's the Paycheck Protection Program, or PPP. I'm sure everyone has seen PPP around. So relatively new. Amy, can you kind of tell us what we know so far?
Yeah, this one's pretty complicated. Mostly because it has very specific uses for how you can use this money and how a portion of it, pardon me, can be forgiven. So you can use it for payroll and some other approved operating expenses. I believe mortgage is in there, insurance is in there, but like you can't use it to buy inventory, for example, or you couldn't use it to run advertising. It's got some very specific uses that they outline. And then you can forgive a percentage, or you can't. The bank, with their partnership with the SBA, will forgive a percentage of that loan. Could be up to 100%, depending on how you structure it. And it's forgiven to the amount of 2.5 times the average monthly payroll for the prior 12 months. So that looks different. We've been seeing lots and lots of questions in the last 3 days, 4 days about different business structures, different compensation structures. And quite frankly, we're still trying to get some of those answers from the SBA, because I think anybody who's worked with government knows that the speed at which this came out was lightning fast, and the broad strokes were made. And I think the details are still sometimes being sorted out. So just know that we're still trying to figure some of those details out. But the important thing to note, as it says there in our slide, it's a 2-year note, 1% interest on the portion that is not forgiven. Unlike the EIDL, the economic injury, this one you apply through an SBA lender. And there's been a lot of discussion about who are our SBA lenders. my advice is start with your regular lender. Reach out to the person you have the relationship with. Have a conversation. Find out what they're doing. There are some infrastructure obstacles that have made it hard for some of our smaller banks to get online and be up to speed maybe as quickly as others, but have the conversation with them. If they can't work with you for whatever reason, keep them in the loop as you work through another lender. Those relationships are super important and we want to keep those. There's no payment on this for the first 6 months, and all for-profits and private nonprofits are also eligible for this one as well. But again, lots of little wrinkles on how that forgivable portion will be calculated. So, but again, through the bank, not through the SBA. I do want to note, if you get the $10,000 grant, the advance that comes out of the EIDL loan, you do have to deduct that from the percentage that's forgiven on the PPP. And if you apply for the EIDL, the economic injury and the PPP, you cannot use those funds for the same purpose. So you can't apply for EIDL and say, I'm going to use it for my mortgage, and then use PPP and I'm going to use it for my mortgage. You can't do that. So we just have to have them be two separate purposes since they're both federal sources.
And
Anything
again,
I missed in your understanding of that?
nope, I just would reiterate, this is mainly a payroll program to keep employees on payrolls.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen the incredible spike in unemployment claims, obviously, the last couple of weeks. This program is meant to help employers keep their employees on the books. That said, it does cover rent and utilities as expenses for a business. So
Yeah.
We're
People at home probably heard that too. His mic went a little weird, but basically what he was saying is it covers other varieties of ways you can use the funding and things that you can do with that, things to go. I'm sure it'll come right back online. No worries, Dan. So so I guess the final point there is you can apply for both.
You can apply for both. Just be really, really clear on how you're going to use the funds from each program. And I will tell you that in all of these programs, remember that you're dealing with the federal government. You are dealing with a very important and serious organization who is going to be holding you to your word. There's many times in these applications where you're being asked to attest to, I attest that this is true. I attest that this is the case. With the PPP, you will need to provide documentation of your payroll. They're making it easy on the front end, but you don't want to be the person on the back end who can't come up with the documentation and either is unable to get the forgivable piece or ends up in some kind of trouble. So again, remember, when you're entering into these are legal agreements that you're entering into with a federal entity. So just do put in enough due diligence to make sure it's really what you want to do.
Absolutely. So as we continue to move through these, in the interest of time.
Is my mic still okay? Is my mic better now?
Yeah, looks like you're sounding better now.
All right. I didn't do anything, but I just want to reiterate that this is also forgivable money. So our title was, Where is the Free Money? If you are using this money for payroll or payroll-related expenses like paying someone while they're out for sick leave for themselves or for child care types of issues, if they're using vacation time, PTO, other things, and then benefits associated with what you offer as a benefits package, my understanding is that those are all considered as part of payroll. So it's not just the wages that you are paying, but it's all those other bennies, as they say, as well, that can be forgiven. So this can be a grant if you use it the right way. Sorry for the mic issues earlier.
No worries. And so as we're going through this, again, this is recorded, and then all of these links are going to be available in the slides that are going to be posted on the website on advancediowa.com and a source link and out on our social medias. So be sure to follow those up. So speaking of the free money, One of the other ones that Dan wanted to make sure we talked about was if you are a current SBA borrower, if you have, I believe it's a 7A, a 504, and it's not on the slide, but I also believe their microloans are included. My understanding, and Dan will correct me when I'm wrong here, is that we've got 6 months of forgiveness where basically the SBA is paying the bank for you. Is that pretty much right, Dan?
Yeah, absolutely. And the second bullet that you added there is also critical. You don't have to do anything. There's no application for this. There's no link to click on. There's no place to go, phone number to call, nothing. You just are automatically given that forgiveness if you have a 7A loan or a 504 loan. One thing that we've been mentioning to folks is oftentimes your landlord may have a 504 loan on the property you're renting, and they are getting some forgiveness right now on the 504 portion of their loan. Keep that in mind when you're kind of negotiating rent forgiveness or easing up on rent fees for the next few months because you're having issues making those payments. Make sure you remember or know that it's very possible that your landlord is also getting some nice benefits right now. Anyway, anything I don't know you might want to add too.
No, absolutely. It's a great point, Dan. And checking with your landlord is always one of the first lines of defense anyway, whether they're getting the 504 or not. Start a dialogue with them.
If you have questions about this, is your banker the best person to talk to? Or does anybody know?
So yes, your 7A loan is typically serviced by your bank. Your 504 would involve what's called a CDC and a third-party lender that you probably have never met. But your CDC provider in our area is called Black Hawk Economic Development. In other areas of the state, there's a very large one called Iowa Business Growth, which is a CDC. There's also a big one in Sioux City, Iowa. I'm blanking on what the name of that group is right now, but those are the 504 entities that do 504 loans, and they probably have already tried to contact you to let you know. But the quickest thing to do is just to look at your account and see if any money has been pulled for that 504 loan for your April payment. It probably would have come out last week. And you can see where you made a March payment, and now you probably have not made an April payment. So, hey, free money. All right.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Next, I think our last federal one that we want to talk about here is one that came out, I think, 2 to 3 weeks ago. It's the Family First Coronavirus Response Act. So at first glance, this one does require businesses to provide paid leave. And then on the back end, we'll provide a dollar-for-dollar payroll tax credit. We're not going to spend a ton of time on this one. We actually had Brenda LaMarche, who's an HR specialist, did a webinar for us just last week. Time flies when you're in your basement. So go ahead and go out to that link. But the things you need to know is that with FFCRA, it does require, there's some nuance to who's required to provide leave. So go see if that is you. Lots of rules around how much and for who and for when. And then know on the back end of it, there's a dollar-for-dollar payroll tax credit. Any other things to add there, Amy?
No, I think when you said there's some rules around who can participate or who has to participate, small businesses under 50, there's some very specific language, but basically, if it's going to endanger the welfare, the financial welfare of your entity, could cause it to cease to exist to fulfill this obligation, it gives you some freedom to withdraw. Again, the guidance is still broad, but just know that's out there.
All right, so we covered a lot of the state of Iowa and federal places where there's some free money. And now there are a lot of other private organizations that have sort of stepped up. Oh, I got one more federal. That's my fault. These are more quick things. One, the individual economic impact payment, I believe also known as your stimulus check. Hopefully you've seen that one coming through. $1,200 per person, depend if you had an adjusted gross income of 75,000 or less, or married filing jointly of 150,000 or less, and should be coming, and $500 per eligible child.
Yeah.
Is where that's at.
I think it's important to remember that that's based on AGI, your adjusted gross income. So after you pull out deductions and your Schedule C and everything else like that, or Schedule E or whatever else you might be filing along with things, it's not just your gross payroll, but it's actually your adjusted gross. Sorry, Patrick.
Hey, no, that's fine. And then another, so these are all IRS programs that we're looking at right here. So then the IRS has one that's also an employee retention credit. Amy, got a couple thoughts on the employee retention credit?
Yeah, this is, again, related to if you had gross receipts that were 50% less than what you had the prior year, and if your business was fully or partially suspended by government order, then you have the ability to get some reimbursement for those wages. So basically they're just saying, hey, you know, the government maybe compromised your ability to operate. We recognize that, again, an effort to keep people with employees in-house. If you can show that your business dropped down to that 50%, if it's 50 to 80% of what it was the year prior, then you can get an offset for 50% of those wages up to $10,000. So that could be very helpful for, say, a small restaurant or small business.
Yep. And then, so there's a link there that you can go to learn more about that one. And then the last piece, we talked about some of the state of Iowa filing deadline extensions. Can you talk a little bit about the federal, the IRS?
Yep.
Filing?
So they pushed those filing deadlines, I believe, also out to July dates. So initially it was just the payments, and then they added the filing. So now everything has been pushed back to July. Of course, check either with your tax preparer, your CPA, or visit the IRS website just to make sure you've got those dates accurate, but they did push things back.
Awesome. So now the other thing that I wanted to get into, a quick look at some private groups or nonprofits that are offering different ways to, they're giving back and trying to offer some support.
Yeah.
The list is here. Any highlights from either of you?
I would say the deadlines vary on all of these. Some of them have been open and then closed. I think, in fact, James Beard, I read a headline this morning that one has been closed for the time being due to overwhelming response. Kiva, those are individual to individual lending. So if you're a person who happens to be in a financial position where this isn't affecting you tremendously and you want to do something a little different than a regular nonprofit, this is individual to individual lending. And that does loans both across the world, but also here in the USA. So that's kind of neat. But there's just lots of programs right now, trade specific. I think if you go to the next page, I think we've got Visa out there, Verizon. There's all different kinds of entities that are looking to help the small businesses that are their bread and butter. Yeah,
some of these large corporations that are trying to provide some additional relief. Facebook, Google, Walmart, Verizon, and many, many others that we didn't include here on the slides, but just wanted to give you a quick look at some of the other things that are potentially out there and things to go and look at, whether it be getting grants that would potentially be some cash or advertising credits from Facebook or Google, or working yourself into Walmart's supply chain. I think there's lots of options for other private grants. So my maybe question on these then would be, how would getting cash or credit or anything like that, and maybe we don't know, affect getting money from the federal government?
I don't know that it would affect necessarily. I'm just going from my own gut instinct on federal programs, but typically they're more concerned about duplication of federal programs against federal programs. Dan, what's your thought?
Yep, exactly. They're going to look at that at the level and see. You already mentioned this, Amy, but if they see you're using money from one source for one purpose, you're going to need a different rationale for that second source of money. And they're also going to be, as you already said, Amy, subtracting awards from new awards. So if you got money from X and it was 50 grand, they're going to take that 50 grand away from the amount that they would otherwise give you for program Y is our understanding right now of how these things are working. Let's see here.
Gotcha. So we're actually kind of well past our time already this morning. So I appreciate everyone who's stuck with us. Our center, the Center for Business Growth and Innovation, where we all work, in our Advanced Iowa program, our Small Business Development Center, and SourceLink, we're all working to help support, provide information, connect you to a bunch of different resources. You can see all of our contact information up here on the screen. We're still right in the thick of things as new programs are coming out, or new developments are happening all the time. Know that we're here, we're open, ready to help. Filling out applications, or looking at other options for your business. Any final thoughts? Yeah, go ahead, Dan.
I was just going to say, oftentimes people don't have time and attention span to watch a 30-40 minute webinar. So if you're fast forwarding to the end to see the summary, we could maybe give a quick summary right now, which would be, I think, apply for these programs. They can all be, you can deny any of them. None of them that I have seen have a fee structure or upfront cost component. There are, unfortunately, scammers all over out there right now trying to say they're going to help you apply for such and such government loan or grant program. Just know that these applications are very, in my opinion, simple and straightforward to apply for. They're not requiring a lot of previous financial history. So if you were already trying to get your taxes done for 2019, most of this information should be readily available to you. And they're just asking for a few data points. Do them yourself or work with a trusted business advisory group like the Small Business Development Center, like the rest of our programming at the Center for Business Growth and Innovation. But know that there are a lot of scammers out there. If you Google some of this stuff, the first few links are going to be scams and ads. Apply for EIDL, apply for PPP. If you're a targeted small business in Iowa, make sure you meet the qualifications of that definition, apply and go through that certification process. Any other summary items you want to mention, Amy?
No, you said it very well. This is the time to get in front of it and apply the funds, although I think it's 349 billion, seems like an awful big number. Do recognize that when you apply that across all of the businesses in the United States who may be applying, it's not such a big number. So get talking to your banker now and move the process forward.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for joining us for another one of our Coping with COVID-19 Creative Solutions for Your Business. Today we were talking about where's the free money. Big thank you to Dan and Amy for taking the time with us this morning to talk through a lot of these programs. Hopefully gave you some information and some links to click on. We'll be doing these the rest of this week, every day at 10 a.m. We're talking about doing some bankruptcy. We're looking at the CARES Act and PPP a little bit more in depth. We're talking about how to, managing through a crisis throughout this week. You can find that full schedule and the entire archive on advancediowa.com. You can also find it on sourcelink.com. You've got all of our contact information there. Please email or call. We would be happy to help and looking forward to continue to help you with your business. We appreciate everyone being here with us this morning, and we will catch you in the next one.
Thanks, everybody, and good luck to you. Stay healthy.